Welcome to Mom Talk Monday. I'm Michelle Darna, aka the Digital Legacy Mama, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit just about mom stuff, overwhelm and what I've done to prevent it most of the time. And then I also want to talk a little bit about just the mom guilt, and how something that my husband just said to me a few days ago really made me kind of think about that. And I'm wondering why I put myself through such a vigorous amount of mom guilt and why that I hold myself to this standard. So I'm going to come back to that later. But the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is some tactics that I've learned over the last 3 years. I have been working through a lot of things. I have been in a lot of different coaching, and my goal is to be doing better at controlling my emotions, understanding why certain situations make me feel triggered, and why that I was reacting the way that I was. So I've been working really hard to overcome those reactions. And I just kind of wanted to tell you guys a little bit of the ways that have worked for me when it comes to not allowing myself to get overwhelmed in the day to day. So if you get overwhelmed by mom life day to day, I would love to, just have that little bit of relatability with you. So feel free to drop overwhelm in the comments if that does happen to you. And so to start out, I want to say that I really go through a lot of planning. Now, that doesn't mean I spend a lot of time planning. I just mean that planning is important to me. And I used to think that I was someone who was just spontaneous and I didn't need to have a plan or anything like that. So, to know now that having a plan is so important, I have come up with a way that I can kind of do that quickly and keep myself from getting too many things in my head at once, because essentially that is what overwhelm is. Overwhelm is just having all of these tasks in our head and all of these things in our head and not knowing how to get them out in an organized fashion. And so what I do is I start out by having a sheet of paper and I write down all of the different things that are in my head when I feel like I might start to feel overwhelmed, and even before that, in order to prevent that feeling. So usually I like to do it on a Sunday afternoon, excuse me, on a Sunday afternoon to make my plan for the week. So I write everything down that I'm going to have to do. Not like appointments and things like that. That's a little bit different. I've gotten really good at using a calendar. I have a dry erase calendar on my wall, and then I use an online calendar as well. Drop that in the comments. Do you use a calendar? If you use one, tell me, do you like having a paper calendar or do you like having a digital calendar? For me, I ended up having to kind of use both. There wasn't a good way for me to just have one or the other. So, what I'm going to do is I write everything down onto a sheet of paper, and it might be like clean the kitchen, vacuum, clean the floors, laundry, and then it might be some tasks that I have for my online business, like responding to emails, responding to messages. In a world that we're in right now where people expect us to always be available to each other, it sometimes can get really hard because I don't know about you guys, but I mentally respond sometimes. So, do you ever just mentally respond and then you go back later and you're like, "Oh man, I wrote that message, but I didn't actually send it," or whatever? Let me know, mentally respond in the comments. Put that in the comments if that's something that you do. So, I have really been working on that. But so I'll go through, and so I have this list, right? And then the most efficient thing that you can do is to group your tasks together for tasks that relate to each other. So you don't want to have like a 30-minute time block where you're going to respond to emails and do the dishes. That's not going to be very efficient for you and can lead to being overwhelmed, or it's kind of multitasking, and truly multitasking doesn't actually get anything done for you. So you want to group these tasks together as like tasks. So I'm going to take any of my digital work and I'm going to put that into a time block. And sometimes I'll do anywhere from 30 minutes up to a 90-minute time block, but I never go past 90 minutes. And that is because of, I can't remember the name of the rhythm that we keep our brains in, but every 90 minutes of time blocks, you need to take a 15-minute break. And that doesn't mean take a 15-minute break from answering messages and then go do the dishes for 15 minutes or go doom scroll on your phone for 20 minutes. It is literally a full mental break. For me, I like to go sit out by the turtle pond and just listen to the water. Some people like to just sit down and have a quiet cup of coffee. You could do a meditation. Whatever it is that kind of actually resets your time and your mind, because if you don't give yourself those mental breaks, then it will lead to burnout. And that's also going to contribute to getting overwhelmed, because when we have too many things in here, that's when we get overwhelmed, like I was saying earlier. And I've learned this from different coaches as well as from my own experiences. So these are, are definitely the steps. So you write everything down, all of your different tasks. Then you want to group them together and then you want to create your time blocks. And like I say, don't go over 90 minutes. That's a good rule of thumb. So, what I'll do is I'll go in and basically just start knocking things out. And here's a really, really big key to using these time blocks efficiently. And it's probably the hardest thing for me, which is even if the tasks are not finished, then you need to stop at the end of that time block and then you continue with your plan. So, say I didn't get finished with all of my virtual work that day, but I have a time block after my break where I'm going to be doing stuff with the kids, or I'm going to be taking care of the kitchen and cleaning up in the dishes, or whatever the case may be. Because you also have to keep in mind that you want to schedule things like time with your family. It might sound silly, but if you're a very busy person who's overwhelmed, you probably aren't scheduling in the time for those things. So, time with your family, time with your children, like maybe one on one specific time, as well as the time that you can use for overflow. And when I say overflow, I mean those tasks that didn't get finished earlier. If you have a scheduled time to deal with those things, then you'll be able to go back to it and not feel stressed like you didn't end up with the time for it that day. And you can do this each week. And it really, really helps me to get through and to be less overwhelmed. It doesn't mean that I don't have overwhelm. I mean, honestly, I just had this whole thing happen a couple of days ago where I just was like, oh my goodness, I'm not doing enough. And I get upset, and it's just not fun for me. And it's not fun for anybody else to have to deal with it either. So these things have definitely helped. And so that kind of just rolls into the mom guilt thing that I wanted to talk about. And what I was going to say is like, so when I was feeling overwhelmed and when I was upset, I was upset because I just feel like I'm stuck in a hamster wheel. Do you ever feel like that? Just drop hamster wheel in the comments, because I don't know about you guys, but as a mom, especially in these times where money is, not meaning what it used to mean, how do we have enough time to be able to work, to make money, and also be able to clean and be a mom and be a wife and whatever the case may be? So we have all of these different roles and all of these different hats that we have to wear. And so sometimes I guess we hold ourselves to this standard, and maybe we don't need to do that, because I was getting really upset and my husband just was telling me like, I'm doing a great job and things like that. And why am I giving myself such a high standard that all of this work that I am doing, I'm still not feeling like I'm good enough? And so those come down to like beliefs about ourselves in our mind. And I'd love to talk about that another time, because breaking through those beliefs and realizing our worth is so important. And I guess that him saying that to me just kind of reminded me of what I do, and that it is important and that it is accomplishing something. I mean, I got to clean my floors yesterday, which is a task that has been sitting there for a while and I hadn't gotten to it yet. So it's celebrating the little wins and knowing that just mom guilt is so real. I mean, sometimes we can get mom guilt just for buying something for ourselves at the store instead of buying something for our children, and that's really silly. Um, but mom guilt itself is not silly. It's there for a purpose, and remembering that every single emotion and every single feeling that we have has a purpose, and then stepping back and saying, "What is the purpose of this?" I think that's just something that is it's really important to give yourself that perspective and to kind of bring it down when it comes to your standard, not like leveling yourself down. Like, you need to be great and you need to continue to follow in your greatness, but don't hold yourself to such a high standard that it's unattainable. Because if you get like that, then you're going to be like that in every aspect of your life and you're never going to feel good enough, and that's not good for you. It's not good for anyone around you. And what kind of an example does that set for your kids? I know some of us can be perfectionists, and perfection is not necessarily, attainable. It's really not. And so, like, instead of saying like practice makes perfect, in my house, we say practice makes progress. And the kids really like that. It really gives you that feeling of improvement, and that's what you're looking for. The last thing I want to tell you guys about is I read this book. It's called The Gap and the Gain. And it's something totally to check out if you're someone who's just like working towards goals and things like that. If you've ever read it, put The Gap and the Gain in the comments. If you've never read it, put never read it. But what it kind of focuses on is that we need to never be comparing ourselves to other people, and we never need to compare ourselves to the end goal. You have to focus on where you started to where you are now, rather than where you are now to the end goal. And that just helps you to stay motivated and to stay present and do all of the things, because we don't want to get burnt out. We have to remember that if we don't take the time to rest and we don't take the time to deal with these things, then life forces us to, whether it's you get a sickness or you lose your voice or you can't, something will force you to rest, not necessarily in a good way, if you do not give yourself those steps that allow you to rest. So that was basically just a quick little, you know, the thing that was just on my heart this morning. I've been personally just really strengthening my time with God and going back to church more. And that has been something that's really helped me. And the message this weekend was just about like, where am I not allowing God into my life? And so I've really been reflecting on that. And I'm hoping to get to share some of that with you guys next Monday. And I also am working on having a couple of my amazing mentors be able to pop in and give us their perspectives and just do some more mom talk. And I just really appreciate everybody that's been here. And I hope that you guys have a great day. I can hear my children are playing kind of crazy because they know I'm sitting in here on a live. So I'm going to go check on them. And just thanks again so much for being here. And I hope that some of these things can help you. You can reach out anytime, and I'm here to support you in anything that I can.